The city of Neoterra was clean. The buildings were tall and white. Flying cars moved silently through the air. Robots cleaned the streets. Everything was perfect. But not here and not in the lower district. Here, the streets were dirty. Trash lay in the corners. The buildings were old and broken. People didn't like to walk here. Only the poor or the forgotten came to this place. And today, something strange was happening. A small figure was moving slowly near a pile of garbage. She looked like a child, but something was different. Her skin was grayish-blue. Her clothes were torn. Her hair was wild and dirty. She was not human. She was an alien. Her hands moved quickly through the trash. She picked up broken wires, dead batteries, and small metal pieces. She placed them carefully in a dirty cloth bag. Her eyes were sharp, like she was searching for something important. A group of humans walked by. They stopped and stared. "Look at her," one woman said. "She smells horrible." "Disgusting creature," said a man. "Why is she even here?" "She should be locked up," someone whispered. Some kids threw stones at her. One hit her leg. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked up for a second, then went back to the garbage. She was used to this. On the other side of the street, a man stood in silence. He wore a long brown coat. His face was half covered by a metal mask. Only his eyes were visible, sharp, serious, and cold. He watched the girl closely. She found something in the trash, a broken chip. It blinked once, then stopped. She held it to her ear and whispered something in a strange language. No one understood, but the man's eyes narrowed. He took one slow step forward. People saw him and stepped back. "What is he doing?" A woman asked. "Is he going to stop her?" The man said nothing. He walked across the street and stopped in front of the alien girl. She looked up at him, calm but ready to run. He looked down at her for a few seconds. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "Come with me." Everyone around froze. "What?" Someone said. "Why would he help her?" A girl stared at him, confused. No one had ever spoken kindly to her before. She opened her mouth but didn't speak. "I said," he repeated, "come with me." "It's not safe here." She stood slowly, still holding the cloth bag. She looked at the crowd, angry faces, cold eyes. She looked back at the man. He didn't smile. But something in his voice, it didn't sound like fear. It sounded like a promise. She took a step forward. "Stop!" shouted a man in the crowd. "You can't take that thing." The man reached into his coat. For a moment, people thought it was a weapon, but he pulled out a small badge. It glowed red. The people gasped. It was an old security badge from the city's science labs. "I know what I'm doing," the man said coldly. "Go back to your homes." No one said anything. The girl followed him. She walked barefoot. The metal parts in her leg made soft clicking sounds. No one could see, but her heart was beating fast. They turned into a dark alley. The noise of the city faded behind them. She looked at him and finally asked, "Why?" The man didn't stop walking. He just said, "Because you're not garbage." They walked deeper into the shadows. Behind them, someone was watching from a rooftop. A small red light blinked on a camera lens. Transmission sent. Target found. The alley was dark and cold, with dripping water from old, broken pipes. The man walked ahead without looking back, and the girl followed quietly with her cloth bag clutched to her chest. The city behind them was still, alive with bright lights and loud noises, but in this narrow space it felt like another world. A rat ran across their path, and she jumped slightly, but the man kept walking. He stopped in front of a rusted door hidden behind stacks of broken crates. He placed his hand on a small panel, and after a soft beep, the door clicked open. He looked at her once, then stepped inside, and she followed without a word. They entered a narrow hallway with dim yellow lights flickering on the ceiling. The girl looked around with wide eyes, ready to run at any sound or movement, but the space was empty and quiet. He opened another door, and this time it led to a room filled with old machines, books, screens, and wires. In the center was a small table with a lamp and two chairs. He pointed to one, and she slowly sat down, still watching him carefully. He walked to a corner and opened a metal box, then brought her a small packet of food and a bottle of water. She hesitated, then took it and started eating. With small, fast bites, she was hungry, very hungry. The man sat across from her with his hands folded. He said nothing for a while, just studied her. Her skin was marked with tiny lines that glowed faint blue whenever she touched something metal. Her eyes were silver and reflective like mirrors. She wasn't just an alien, she was something more. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small scanner. Without asking, he waved it over her arm. It beeped softly and a series of strange numbers appeared. On the screen, he frowned and looked at her again. "You're not just a visitor from space," he said slowly. "You were built for something." The girl didn't answer. Instead, she opened her cloth bag and took out the broken chip she had found. Earlier, she placed it gently on the table and stared at it. The man leaned forward but didn't touch it. "What is that?" he asked. She touched the chip and softly spoke a word in her language. For a second, the chip blinked, then a faint light flickered around the room. A hologram formed above the table. It showed a map with spinning numbers and flashing red points. The man's eyes widened. He knew this tech. It was high-level, forbidden, and long lost. The girl looked at him and for the first time spoke in his language. "Home," she said slowly. "You remember this?" he asked quietly. She nodded. Images flashed in her mind: tall metal towers, fire in the sky, running through halls, alarms, red lights, a hand reaching for hers. She touched her head and winced in pain. He stood up and brought a small device. "This will help," he said, and placed it near her temple. She flinched but allowed it. A soft hum filled the room, and her breathing slowed. She was remembering. She was more than just a survivor. She was a vault, a living storage of data and secrets from a time before the war. The man sat back down and looked at the chip again. "If they find you, they will take you apart piece by piece," he said. "You carry something. They want—" The girl looked afraid, not of him, but of something outside, something bigger. Suddenly there was a loud knock at the outer door. 3 times, heavy and sharp. They both froze. The man quickly shut down the hologram and picked up a small device from the shelf. He walked to a screen and tapped it. The outside camera showed 2 men in black armor standing at the door. One held a scanner and the other was speaking into a radio. They were tech police. "They're here for you," the man said. She stood up, ready to run, but he shook his head. "This way." He opened a panel in the wall, and behind it was a small tunnel. "Go in and keep moving until you reach the old train lines," he said. She didn't move. "What about you?" she asked softly. He smiled slightly. "I'll buy you time." Before she could say anything, the door was hit again, this time harder. She stepped into the tunnel and crawled forward, the bag still in her hand. Behind her, the panel closed silently. She moved quickly through the dark, narrow path ahead. She saw a faint light. She kept crawling, kept moving. The city was hunting her, but now she had a reason to survive. The tunnel was long and narrow, filled with dust and the smell of old metal. The girl moved on her hands and knees, her eyes fixed on the faint light ahead. Every sound echoed around her: the hum of pipes, the distant rattle of a train long forgotten. She was breathing fast but quiet, trying not to think, just move. She reached the end and pushed open a rusty hatch with her shoulder. The hatch creaked, but no one was there. She stepped out into a wide space full of broken tracks, metal beams, and dark shadows. Old train lines, unused for years, covered in spider webs and forgotten tools. She looked around carefully, then followed a narrow path between the tracks. She didn't know where to go, but her feet moved like they remembered something. A sharp pain hit her head again. Like a spark, she grabbed her temple and fell to her knees. Flashes filled her mind, bright lights, machines, people in white coats. A voice calling her name, a code being entered, a hand pulling her into a pod, then silence. She gasped and looked at her hand. It was glowing, not just glowing, but pulsing with small lines that moved like circuits under her skin. She looked up. In front of her stood an old station, broken and dark, but the symbol on the wall made her stop. A half-sun with 3 lines. She had seen it before, somewhere deep inside her memory. She stepped inside slowly. The air was still and cold. Screens cracked, machines rusted, chairs broken, but something in the air felt alive. She touched a wall and a soft light followed her fingers. A small panel lit up and showed a strange symbol. She placed her hand on it. It scanned her skin. A voice spoke in an old robotic tone. Access confirmed. The floor shook slightly and a hidden door opened. Inside was a small round room with smooth walls and a glass table in the center. She walked in and the door closed behind her. Suddenly, lights turned on around the walls, showing images, photo scientists working, a little girl in a pod. Her. She stepped closer. Each image felt like a punch to her chest. One photo showed her with a woman smiling and holding her hand. Another showed the same woman crying while security bots stood behind her. The girl touched the photo. A small voice played from a hidden speaker. Project Dawn date 2437. Subject 6 shows high cognitive function and adaptive memory retention. She listened without blinking. Subject 6 shows signs of emotional development unexpected in early phases. Memory backup required in case of field loss. She stepped back, the lights dimmed, and a part of the glass table opened. Inside was a small device shaped like a seed. She reached for it. As soon as she touched it, more images filled the room, this time not just photos, but recordings. She saw the lab burning, the same man who helped her fighting guards, the woman screaming for the pod to be launched. Then silence. She was the experiment, the vault. The final copy of something powerful, a memory keeper. Her knees shook. She sat on the floor trying to breathe. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she didn't understand why. She wasn't supposed to feel, but she did. She looked at the seed in her hand and felt it connect. Her head filled with sounds. People speaking, coordinates, weapons, ships, hidden in the dark corners of space. This was a key, a digital heart holding everything the others had tried to erase. Suddenly, a beep echoed in the room. Someone was coming. A red light blinked on the wall. Motion detected. Outside, footsteps 2, no 3. She stood quickly and placed the seed into her cloth bag. She ran to the back of the room where a narrow shaft led up to the surface. She climbed fast, her hands glowing brighter. Now she reached the top and burst through a weak wooden door. She was outside. The sun was low, the sky red and heavy. She ran. She didn't know where, but her feet knew. Behind her, loud metal footsteps echoed through the station. A voice shouted, "Target acquired." She turned into an alley. Her hand touched a wall. The circuits in her skin sent a pulse. A gate opened. She stepped through and the wall closed again. Silence. She leaned against the wall, trying to calm her heart. She reached into her bag and pulled out the seed. It glowed softly. She knew she had to find the man. Again, he knew more. He had answers, and someone else had built this place for her to remember, to continue. She whispered a word she had heard in the recordings. Sanctuary. Somewhere out there it waited, a place where she could learn who she was and why they feared her so much. Asterisk. The city looked different now. From the rooftops it was alive with drones, flashing signs, and sharp sirens cutting through the air. She moved fast across the buildings, her bare feet silent against the metal behind her. The sounds of pursuit never stopped, mechanical wings slicing the air. Voices in cold static repeating her image. Subject 6 priority, capture alive if possible, dead if necessary. She didn't stop. She couldn't. Her legs ached, her arms burned, but her mind was clear. She had to survive. The seed in her bag was warm, pulsing with quiet light. It guided her like a whisper. Left turn now, down the pipes. Through the broken skywalk she followed every silent direction, her body moving without thinking. She didn't know who had placed the path in her head. Maybe the woman from the photos. Maybe the man who had vanished. Maybe someone else, but it was working for now. A shadow crossed the sky. She ducked just in time as a drone fired a net that missed her by inches. She rolled behind a wall and dropped 3 levels down into a market filled with steam and shouting. People saw her and stepped away fast. Some yelled, some ran, but no one helped. She grabbed a piece of cloth from a vendor stall and wrapped it around her head, hiding her face. A voice echoed through the street, "Wanted subject 6, dangerous and unstable. Reward active." She kept moving. In an alley 2 bots landed from the air. They scanned the crowd. She pressed herself against the wall and closed her eyes. A child nearby cried and pointed. "There she is." The bots turned and raised their weapons. She ran again, faster than before. She jumped a fence, climbed a drain pipe, and leapt onto a moving train. The wind hit her face, but she held tight. The city lights passed below her like stars falling in reverse. She looked up at the sky and wondered if there was a place beyond it. A place where no one hunted her, a place without alarms or fear, but dreams could wait. Survival came. First the train slowed near a freight station, forgotten and cracked. She jumped off and landed hard on the gravel. She limped into the shadows and found an old stairwell that led underground. A safe place. Maybe. She moved slowly, now her breath heavy, her limbs shaking. Inside the stairwell she found a rusted door and pushed it open. The room was dark and quiet, filled with old boxes, wires, and dust. But it was empty. No sounds, no voices, just silence. She sat in a corner and opened her bag, the seed. Blinked. She placed it on the floor and spoke softly. "Show me the room." Lit up with images, maps of the city, names of people, files on Project Dawn. She saw her face on one screen, then the man he had once worked on the project, his name was Elias, he had erased his own records, faked his death. He had once believed in the program, then he had destroyed it. To save her, a loud noise interrupted the vision. Footsteps above, heavy, slow. She grabbed the seed and turned off the light. Too late. A figure stepped into the room, tall and wearing a black helmet with red lights glowing from the eyes. It was not a drone, it was worse. A hunter unit bio-tracker installed, emotionless, relentless. It saw her and spoke. Target found. She ran to the back of the room, but there was no door, only cold walls. The hunter raised its arm and fired a bolt of energy. She ducked, but it grazed her side. She screamed. Her hand touched the wall. A pulse spread from her skin. The wall cracked and opened. She dove through, and the wall sealed behind her. She fell into a long tunnel lit with green lights. Her side was bleeding, her vision blurry, but she was alive. She kept walking. The tunnel sloped downward, then opened into a wide hall with broken pods and shattered glass. She recognized the place, a testing chamber. She was here once long ago. She touched the nearest pod. A soft voice whispered, Subject 4, failed. Subject 5, terminated. Subject 6, escaped. She backed away. She was not the first, but she was the last. She walked to the center of the room where a small control panel still blinked. She placed the seed into the slot. It fit perfectly. The room changed. Walls opened. Files appeared. A message played. If you are hearing this, you made it. You survived. Now it's your choice. Run again or rise. She stood still for a long moment. The sounds of the hunt were behind her, but the truth was ahead. The light from the console faded as the message ended, but the words remained in her mind like a fire that refused to go out. Now it's your choice. Run again or rise. She stood in the middle of the forgotten lab, surrounded by broken pods, cracked screens, and the silence of failed experiments. Each corner of the room whispered a memory, some hers, some from those who never left. She stepped forward, past the rusted metal, past the black scorch marks left by long ago battles, past the faded labels that once named test subjects, like her Subject 6 hybrid intelligence biotech class. Read a title, not a name, a number, not a soul. She closed her eyes and placed her hand on her chest, feeling the beat within. It was still hers, even if someone had built it, even if someone had planned every beat. It was hers now. Her eyes opened and looked across the room. A sealed door stood at the far wall, untouched by time or fire. Symbols on the surface glowed faintly as if they were waiting. She walked to it slowly. The seed in her bag pulsed again, as if recognizing the place. She touched the door. No key, no code, just connection. Lines of light spread from her hand across the door in patterns older than any map. With a soft sound, the door slid open, revealing a stairway of black stone leading downward into silence. She descended with careful steps. Each footstep echoed into darkness. She reached the bottom and gasped. A vast chamber opened before her, filled with machines unlike any she had seen. In the center, a tall pillar of glass held a still figure, a man, eyes closed, face peaceful, floating in blue light. She stepped closer and saw the badge on the floor beside the pillar. Dr. Ardenvale. Her mind flinched. That name, she had heard it before. He was not just a scientist, he was her creator. No, not just creator. Her memory returned in sudden waves. Warm hands, a soft voice, laughter. She remembered sitting beside him as he read stories. She remembered falling asleep while he whispered her name, Leora. That was her name, not Subject 6, Leora. She said it aloud, and the machines responded. Lights turned on around the chamber. Screens flickered to life. A voice filled the air. Welcome, Leora. System integrity low. Would you like to initiate final protocol? She looked at the figure in the glass. He was still breathing, barely suspended for years, waiting, protecting something. She touched the pillar and the glass responded. A projection appeared beside her, a recording Ardenvale's face. Tired eyes, his voice soft but strong. Leora, if you are seeing this, it means the world has failed. It means they hunted you. It means I could not stop them, but you are still here. You are the last key, not to a weapon, but to memory, to truth. He looked down. The project was not made for control. It was made for hope. They changed it, turned it dark. Used you as storage for everything they feared to lose, but I saved the core. I saved you. He looked into the camera with tears in his eyes. Live, find the others. Awaken what was lost. You are not a mistake. You are the beginning. The recording ended and silence returned. Leora wiped her face. She had cried, but did not remember starting. She looked around the chamber again. This was not just a lab, it was a vault, a sanctuary hidden under ruins in time. A place built not to trap, but to protect. She walked to another console and touched it. A map appeared dotted with small lights scattered across the planet. Other vaults, other like her, or maybe messages. Maybe survivors, maybe both, but before she could explore more, the sound of grinding metal echoed above. They had found her. She looked up at the stairs and knew she could not stay. Not now, not alone. She turned to the pillar. One last look at the man who had given her more than wires and skin. He had given her purpose. She whispered, "Thank you." Then she ran back up the stairs, through the broken lab, and out into the fading light of the outside world. The city still hunted her, but now she knew where to go, where to start. Her name was Leora, and she had work to do. The wind was sharp against her face as she crossed the empty ridge. Outside the city, where broken towers leaned like tired bones and the earth cracked beneath old war scars, Leora moved. Fast, with the map in her hand and the name in her heart, Elias. She didn't know why she trusted it, but the map glowed each time. She whispered his name, and the lights aligned toward an old signal tower. Beyond the border she climbed hills covered in metal ruins and past shattered drones like fallen birds, their wings bent and rusted. Everything was silent except the soft hum of her bag. The seed still glowed, still waiting. She reached the tower by night. It stood tall but worn, its top twisted and broken from a forgotten battle. A soft light flickered near its base. She approached with caution. No movement, no sound. Then she saw the mark. The half-sun with 3 lines, her mark carved into the steel. She placed her hand on it, and the ground beneath her shifted. A hatch opened. She stepped inside, down a metal staircase lit by red emergency lights. Each step echoed, each breath held. At the bottom was a small room filled with old tech screens, wires, and humming panels, and there he was, Elias. The man who once said, "Come with me," sitting in a chair, his back turned to her. He spoke before she could. "You found it." His voice was calm, like he already knew. She stepped closer. "You knew about the vault. You knew about Arden." He turned slowly, his eyes tired but sharp, his coat dusted with ash. "Yes, I helped build it, and I helped destroy it." "Why?" she asked. "Why save me? Why run?" He looked at her, then stood. "Because you were not just data, you were the future. They didn't want a person, they wanted a tool, a weapon." And I said, "No." She searched his face for a lie, but found only pain. "Then why hide? Why leave me?" He looked away. "Because I was a coward. Because I believed I could fix it from the shadows." He stepped forward and reached into a drawer. He pulled out a small broken device. "Your tracker. I removed it years ago, but it left a trace. They followed. They always follow." She looked at the device, tiny and black, like a ghost of the past. She held it and felt cold. "We have to stop them," she said. "Not just for me, for the others." Elias nodded. "There are more. I've seen the maps." He paused. "And not all are safe. Some are still in labs. Still dreaming, still trapped. Then we wake them," she said, her voice strong. Suddenly the screens flashed red movement. Detected unknown signal approaching. Elias turned fast and tapped the console. A feed opened outside the hatch. A woman stood alone, her body tall and covered in black armor, her face half hidden, but Leora knew her, the woman from the vault memory. The one who gave the final order, the one who locked the door. Elias cursed under his breath. Eveline, she was part of the original team. She stayed behind when the project was shut down. They said she died. They lied. The door above opened with a loud. His footsteps, loud and heavy. Elias grabbed a weapon and stood in front of Leora. "Stay behind me." But Leora stepped forward. "No, she's here for me." The door to the room slid open. Aveline walked in, her eyes glowing red, her voice cold. "You've grown." "I didn't think you'd survive." Leora stared at her. "You left me to burn." "I saved the project. You were unstable, too human." Leora's hands glowed with quiet blue light. "Maybe that's what you feared." Evelina smiled. "Not fear, control. I needed you. Controlled, but you ran, and now you've infected the system." Leora raised the seed from her bag. "You mean this is not infection, it's truth, it's memory, it's what you tried to erase?" Evelyn stepped forward. "Give it to me now." Elias raised his weapon. "She's not giving you anything." Evelyn didn't blink. "You think you can protect her? You were the one who started this, who helped me build her." Leora froze. What she looked at Elias. "Is it true?" His silence was answer enough. She stepped back, hurt rising in her chest like fire. "You said you saved me. I tried. I didn't know what they would do. I thought we were building peace, not war." Aveline laughed. "Poor Elias, always the dreamer, still lying to children." Leora's hands tightened. She looked at both of them, then at the seed, then at herself. "Enough," she said. "No more lies, no more control." She placed the seed on the floor, and light filled the room. Blinding blue pure Aveline stepped back. What are you doing? Leora's voice rose. Releasing what you buried and choosing for myself. The light from the seed burned brighter than the room could hold, spreading across the metal floor, crawling up the walls, filling every crack, every wire, every forgotten screen. Leora stood in the center, her arms raised, her breath slow, her heart loud. The memories flowed through her, every vault, every name, every lost one. They were not just files, they were voices, children who never woke, subjects who never had names. Fragments of lives buried inside her, now rising. Aveline screamed and raised her arm, firing a bolt of energy toward Leora, but the light from the seed caught it midder and turned it to dust. Elias stepped back, his eyes wide. He had seen power before, but never like this. Leora looked at Aveline. This ends. Now Aveline's face twisted. You are nothing without us. You are a failed experiment, a locked box, a broken tool. Leora's eyes glowed. I was all those things until I remembered who I was. She stepped forward and the room changed around her, panels lifted from the ground. Screens turned to show images of the others, their signals blinking from faraway places, vaults still sealed, pods still active, souls still waiting. Leora raised her hand and the seed floated upward, spinning faster. The energy cracked the walls, but didn't destroy it, rebuilt. It healed the chamber, hummed like a living thing. Aveline rushed forward with a blade in her hand. No more speeches, no more code, just silence. She struck, but the blade stopped an inch from Leora's chest, and invisible force held it there. Leora didn't flinch. She looked at Aveline with calm fire. I am not your creation. I am the result of everything you feared. She stepped closer, and the blade snapped into pieces. Aveline fell to her knees. The power was too much. Her voice was barely a whisper. You don't know what you are. You will break the world. Leora placed a hand on her shoulder, then let it break and become something better. Aveline's armor dimmed, her lights fading, her eyes losing fire. She was still breathing, but she was done. Leora turned to Elias. He had dropped his weapon. He looked at her like a man who had seen both miracle and regret. I'm sorry, he said. I thought I was saving something. I didn't know it was you. Leora nodded. You were part of the lie, but you chose truth. Now help me. He stepped forward. What do you need? She pointed to the console. I need to open the vaults. All of them. Elias moved fast, tapping commands, unlocking systems, rerouting power the signal from. The seed connected with each pulse. One by one, the vaults responded. Green lights blinked on maps, first 5, then 15, then 30. The world began to stir across distant mountains, under ruined cities, beyond collapsed spaceports. Doors began to open, pods hissed, lights blinked, eyes opened. Leora felt them all, their fear, their strength, their hope. They were not machines, not tools, they were people. And they were waking. The chamber began to shake, not from failure, but from the world catching up. Leora looked at the seed, now pulsing slow and steady. She reached out and took it back into her hand. Its energy settled into her skin. She was whole. The door behind them burst open. City drones filled the space, ready to fight, but they stopped. Scanners read Leora not as a threat, but as something new, a different signal. One they had no orders for, one they could not process. They hovered silently, awaiting command. Leora raised her voice. I am not your master. I am not your enemy. I am a voice that was hidden, and now I speak. The drones slowly turned and left without conflict. The silence returned. Elias let out a breath he had held for too long. So what now? Leora looked out through a broken window. The stars above were no longer cold now. They were full of roads. We gather, we learn, we build, not for revenge, but for balance, for peace. He smiled. And they'll come for you again. She nodded. Let them. This time we won't hide. She walked to the exit. The light of dawn touched the ground. Outside, not just a new day, a new world. She stepped into it, not as a number, not as a mistake, but as herself. Leora. The first of many, not the end, but the beginning.